Welcome back to UI5ers Live. Today we have a special guest with us again, and this is Mauricio Lauffer. Welcome, Mauricio.
Hey, everyone.
Yeah, you are living in Australia, so it's really great. You joined in our invitation. Also, it's at, I think almost midnight at your place, right?
That's correct. 11 p.m.
11 p.m. That's really late. Yeah, Mauricio is dealing with UI5 since quite some years, I believe, and contributes to it extensively at different levels. And he also created several projects for UI5. And one of them is the OpenUI5 error collector, a library to collect JavaScript and UI5 errors. And this library Mauricio will showcase to us today. Yeah, sorry, Mauricio. And then I'm also happy that we have two additional of our colleagues with us today, namely Dirk Becker. Hi, Dirk. Yeah, and Vladimir Velinov. Hi, Vladimir. They both are working for the smart controls development area and are joining today to gather feedback from you on open sourcing parts of the smart controls library. And also here with me, as always, are Stefan Beck.
Hi.
Peter Müßig.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, and Andreas Kunz.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah. So before we start, some topics on the go. First of all, some days ago, call for speakers for UI5Con 2022 closed. And yeah, thanks for everyone who handed in its topics. I'm really looking forward for this year's agenda and hope there will quite some contribution also from outside. And also thanks to everyone who contacted us to volunteer with organizing the event. Especially doing the evaluation of the submission. That's really great. Only with this help, UI5 actually can take place. And so it's great to see that there is still the spirit in the community to keep UI5Con alive. So thanks a lot for that. Yeah, and if you are interested in who they are, we published the name on the UI5Con homepage. So there you can find everyone who is volunteering to make this happen. Yeah, and then some months ago, Peter presented some new UI5 controls based on the UI5 web components. Yeah, you can now find sample implementations of these controls also in the OpenUI5 demo kit. So especially if you go to the nightly demo kit, you can find there, if you look for web components, you can find those controls and see how you can use them. And last month, we presented the Evergreen URL, also by Peter. And yeah, this URL is active now and ready to be used. And Peter also wrote a blog post about it.
Just for everyone to see it. So I sent the link also in the chat in a second. It's the sub UI5 patch level independent bootstrap, also known as the Evergreen version. So here you get all the details. It explains how it works, what you need to do, the technical flow underneath, for what exactly it works out. And basically, since today, it finally really works out with all the configurations we did on Akamai and so on, and having the server configured, so that you can use it now, for example, for one of the long-term URL, like 196, just enter that. It will redirect you to the latest patch then for the demo kit itself. Or if you, for example, use it then for your application, in the Bootstrap, you can now use one of these major minor version URLs to boot from there. If you run that, then it comes up. There are things you need to know. It needs to be async in order to work. We made this as a kind of a step that people are adopting to the asynchronous Bootstrap. And with that, you are now able to benefit from the upgrades, which happens then underneath automatically. And with that, back to Margot.
Not much further from me, but I would just hand over to Mauricio to present the OpenUI5 error collector. So it's your turn.
All right. So let me start sharing my screen, and I will just walk through the library, why I have created the library, what is the problem that I'm trying to solve with the library, and I will showcase some examples. I will start with a question for everybody. So how do you handle UI5 errors and the JavaScript errors in your application today? The errors that happen on user land. So I guess that you don't. Probably you just don't do anything. All the errors that happen in the browser, they live and die in the browser. Nobody acts on them until a customer complains. If the user complains and create a ticket, take a screenshot or something that's not working accordingly or as expected, they will complain. But for all the errors that they go hidden or silent inside your browser, nobody will pay attention. And we don't have those errors logged anywhere. So it's different from, let's say, in an ABAP code, where whenever we have any errors, we log the errors in SLG1 application or something like that, or even a custom table, but we do log the errors and the exceptions that happen in the ABAP stack. And the same is for Node.js or Java or whatever tool. We log the errors. But for whatever reason, we don't do that with our UI5 applications. We don't do that with our Fiori applications. So the problem for me was every time, every new project, every new customer, we would need to tackle this problem over and over again. And sometimes we'd have kind of weird conversations, such as, oh, what do you as a customer or as a partner, what are you guys using to handle this kind of situation, to handle these JavaScript errors? What are you doing? And sometimes they would say, we don't do anything. And yeah, we don't do anything because SAP doesn't provide anything to us. So probably we don't need to do anything because we don't have anything from SAP. And it has nothing to do with SAP. It has to do with the type of application that you want to deliver, the level of quality that you want to deliver to your customers. So the tool UI5 does support anything that you want to do because it's just a JavaScript application, right? So that was the reason behind the application or the library that I have created. And the library just collects pretty much everything that happens in terms of errors and exceptions in the JavaScript stack. So it's going to get all the reference errors, syntax errors, type errors, and etc. It's going to catch all promises that you didn't catch. So all the exceptions, all the rejections that you have in your promises that you didn't catch, then this is going to be also logged or captured by the library. The other thing is every time that we use the UI5 logger, the module that we have inside UI5 to log any error message or any warning or whatever log level we are using, this is going to be captured as well. And last but not least is also capturing the errors from report API, which is pretty much a new API that we have in the browsers. It's supported by the new or the all modern browsers today. So it gets some other errors, and we'll see one example here. Okay, so what we see in the screen is the Git repo. It has some descriptions in here, some links, and then we have the link here for the report API if you want to read a little bit more about this one. And some examples, the folder structure, blah, blah, blah. So what UI5 offers for us today? The methods or the hooks that we have in UI5, they are inside the components. And we do have something that we could use in here for the component control. We have on window error. So this one we could, is just a wrapper for the events error that we have in JavaScript. So the problem using this one is we would need to implement that per component, which means over and over, we would need to rewrite the whole code. With the application or with the library that I have created, we can just plug it in that into the HTML, and this is going to work for everything, regardless the component, regardless if it is a component, it could be just a very simple JavaScript application that you have, you still can use that library. The other thing is you can create a plugin for your Fiori Launchpad, and then all the errors that you have inside the Fiori Launchpad, they're going to be captured, and then you decide what to do because the library captures the errors and have a hook to send the errors to an endpoint. It doesn't have any backend. It doesn't have any API for any backend for anything. It just captures and send that to an endpoint that you are going to give. And that's it. It is a very simple library. You can go through the code later on to try to see how this happened. So the examples that I'm going to show, one is going to be sending the data or the errors to gateway, SAP gateway, or it could be your Fiori server, your gateway, your SAP backend in general. Then I'm going to show one example, sending the log to BTP login service. If you have your CAPM application running in BTP Cloud Foundry, if you have your Java application with UI5 on top of that running in BTP, then we can capture the errors as well. And also I'm going to show the example sending that to CloudWatch. So it's pretty much what we're going to see in here. So going to the examples. This first one is running local, and just to give you one example or one glance on what is going to be captured. So these are all the errors, and this is the structure in how this is going to be captured. And exactly that structure that's captured is the structure that it's sent to whatever endpoint that you have decided. We can see we have different types. We have the stack. We have a lot of extra information that you can go through the Git repo and understand exactly what they do and what they are. Just to give one example from the report API, the report API gives us something nice. We see here in the browser console. So we also capture that in the library. So you can see the type is deprecation. This is coming from the report API and says, oh, synchronous AJAX requests are not supported or should not be used anymore. So everything that you use in your application that's deprecated by the browsers, this is going to be captured as well. So this is the promise one. This is generic JavaScript errors. And then we have all the UI5 errors being captured in here, the ones that we get from using the module, the log module. Okay, so let me just move on to the next one. So this one is exactly this one here. A very basic structure, just loading the bootstrap here, not using a component, just loading the bootstrap and capturing here just to have the log. And then using the log to collect everything. And then because of the log level that I'm using here, we can see that I'm logging 3 different messages, but the only one captured is the error level. This is due to the log level set in the log for the UI5, right? So we see this is the promise. I'm throwing the error in the promise. I'm not capturing that error. That's why we have that error in there. This one is a JavaScript, generic JavaScript error. I defined a constant x1 and then I try to redefine the value. This other one is also generic JavaScript. I'm trying to call a method which doesn't exist in that context. And the other one is just throwing a generic error. So this is it. Everything is going to be captured in or by the library. From this one, we can move to the second one, and then let me just close this. The second one is going to be pretty much the same, and the difference is for the first one, I just loaded the library. I didn't pass any parameter, which means I didn't set the endpoint to that or be sent to send the logs to, right? So I'm just capturing the errors, doing nothing with that, just saving that or exposing that in the UI. So I'm getting the global from the library here, getting all the errors that the library has captured and saving that in here, right? So the second one, we are going to pretty much do the same, capture everything, but we are going to set an endpoint. So I again using the global here and I set in the configuration and I saying, okay, my endpoint to send all the logs that I captured is this one. So get everything and send in there. Then we can see something happening here. Let me just refresh.
Does it mean the
So
configuration, Mauricio, can only be set with JavaScript API? You could also foresee something like a query parameter in the script, maybe you can use to read.
You can, so for this very first one, everything that is captured, it's going to be sent. So for the other one, the last example that I'm going to show, you can pass a hook, and then before sending the logs to the endpoint, you can do whatever you want. So if you want to enrich the message, if you want to change the message, then or I don't want to send let's say generic errors. I don't want to send.
Yeah, go ahead. In mind is really the point whether it's only yes, this configuration can be only set via this option here, or whether it's possible that you can pass it maybe in the script tag as a parameter for that or something.
Oh, okay, got it.
So because
no,
here,
at this moment is just here.
Okay.
Is just calling the method. This could be a good PR to contribute to the project.
Maybe I try it in parallel.
It would be more than welcome.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, at this point, no configuration passed through the script or the loader. Everything is through the API. So everything is calling the global. And
once this is set, then the information can be sent to the backend. So it will be collected till then, and then finally it will be sent.
Every time that the events are triggered, the event for logging through Wi5 log, the module, we are going to capture. Every time that we have rejection not handled for a promise, it's going to be captured. Every time that we have an error event in JavaScript, it's going to be captured. But it doesn't mean that we are going to send to the backend over and over again. So we can have a look in here. And okay, let me just do this. So we can see if we look for the requests in here, okay, they look fine. We don't have anything sending the logs. So it doesn't use a timeout. It doesn't send every time that we capture the logs, because I didn't want to clog the system. I didn't want to use a lot of resources over and over and block the UI. So it sends whenever we change the visibility of the page. So if we change the visibility of the page, it's going to send. And at this moment, it's a local one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just spin up the server here. And then we can see that this is going to start capturing the message in here. So I'm going to refresh again. Then refreshing, we can see, okay, I don't see anything in here. Visibility of the page didn't change. So I'm going to just click on something else. So visibility is hidden. Now I see this one being sent, and we can see the logs being sent to the server. So at this moment, it's just running local. So I'm doing that just to avoid using resources, blocking UI, all that stuff that we know that it's bad for the application. The other thing that we can do is, what if I close the tab before sending the log? This would be a problem, right? Because all the errors that happen in that section or that session, I would lost. So for this one, we have something similar. Okay, let me just restart just to see the logs coming through. So I'm going to refresh. I don't see anything in here. I'm going to close. And when I close, we send the logs. And because I'm using send beacon, it guarantees that this is going to be delivered even though you have closed the tab. And then this is just a mechanism to make sure that whenever you close the tab, even if you are using a mobile, this is going to be sent through. So it's not using anything else, it's just using send beacon. If you use just this one, if you are not passing the hook, right? If you pass a hook, then this is up to you. You can use and you can call whatever you want to call. You are going to be free to do whatever you wanted to do. So let me just rush through the other things.
There was one question also in parallel from Marcel,
yeah, sure.
maybe. What if there is an issue happening twice or duplication? Is there a duplication detection inside so that you send it only once? Or
good question. At this moment, no, there's no duplication identifier. So if we have the same issue happening over and over for whatever reason, it's going to be logged a lot of times. And in my opinion, you should log these a lot of times, because this is going to give you the real scenario for the application, the real problem that's happening. Let's say if I have an issue that happens 1,000 times in the same session and I save just once in the log, it's going to be a little bit misleading. And then I can look at the logs and say, oh yeah, you know, it's just one error. It didn't bother the user maybe, so nobody's complaining. And the good thing with this library for me is that it gives visibility for all the issues that we have in the browser without users opening tickets and complaining about the issues. So we can proactively look into the logger and see, oh, okay, we do have issues. Oh, those are the issues. Let me try to identify. Let me have a look in the stack. Let me grab the file, the line, and the column with the problem and try to understand what's happening.
Cool.
Okay, so my second one is, or the third one actually, is exactly the same one that we just saw in here, but the URL is different and the app is not running local. So this one is running in BTP. And if we have a look in here, we don't see any logs. So this is the log that we should see. I'm going to refresh. The session has expired. Nice. Okay. So for this one, I have created a very simple Node.js application and deployed to BTP. That application just receives the requests that we are sending in this endpoint in here. So this is going to be a different URL, whatever you have. And that application is going to capture the log and log in application login and also send to AWS. So it's going to save the log in two places. In my case, it's just for the demo, but in your case, you may save that application, the log, in BTP. You may save that in Azure, AWS, Google, whatever tool that Google is using for login. So we can see the logs being stored now in BTP. And then I can have a look and say, oh, okay, so this is the application with problem. This is what's happening. This is the day. This is the frequency that issue is happening, and so on. Also, I could open Kibana dashboard. And from there, I could explore more what's happening and go into details what's happening with the application. So I can go in here, for example. I can see that I have some errors happening, and then I can see errors for different applications, errors types, and then I can have all the informations. For example, see how many errors, the type of the errors, and so on. So in this one, because I was a bit lazy, I didn't create any custom fields for the application log, and then I just, okay, I'm going to just save the message and track and throw all the stack error in the message. But you can create custom fields and have a better reporting, and then you can use the custom fields to filter and to use in the chart as well. So it's much better to track what's exactly happening in the application. But just this one is just to give you an example that you do have tools to track. You do have tools to understand what's happening in the application, even though users are not taking screenshots and sending emails and tickets to you saying, oh, something is not happening. Then the same, as I said, the same application that I deployed to BTP, it's sending the message to AWS CloudWatch. And then this is my log stream in CloudWatch, and I can see the errors happening here. So I have the timestamp, I have the message, and I could have the whole object with all custom fields with all the properties in there. Now, last but not least, and probably the most, the case that people are going to use the most is using that in a regular SAP backend. So I'm going to go to SLG1 or ball application. I'm using just this one with a custom sub-object. So if I get something from, I don't have anything, then I go to the application, and then I'm going to refresh. So this is a more, let's say, complete Wi-Fi Fiori application. We have the component, we have everything, manifests, models, and so on. Then again, looking at the network, nothing's happening. Then changing visibility is going to send. And then once we send that, we can see the logs coming. At least we should see. Let me have a look in there. Yeah, nice. Who doesn't love that? Yeah, for whatever reason.
Yeah, maybe because it's a different time zone.
For whatever reason, it's just not working out. Okay, let me just jump into the code then and try to figure out. So this is again just regular. The only difference is loading that in the index HTML. If it was a Fiori Launchpad, you could create a Fiori plugin, a Launchpad plugin, and bake that into the plugin. Then let me just go. So this is the OData services. So I have created an OData services just to receive the whole payload for the log. So this is the OData service, very basic one. And then here it's where I'm setting the configuration, and I set in the endpoint as before, and this I'm getting from the OData service. But I'm also passing a hook, because for this one, I need to pass some extra information, or I need to do something different. For whatever reason, I want to do something different rather than just send the payload as is. So in this case, I creating a hook in here. This is just a callback. And then in this one, I'm getting the server URL, and I'm getting all the errors that I have captured. And then in this case, I'm passing one by one and then creating all the entries one by one in the application. This is my entity. And then at the end, I just submit the changes. So this is pretty much that.
Great demo. Yeah.
Thank you. Let me just stop sharing now.
There's one question from Marian in the Q&A.
Yeah, maybe we can discuss this in to the end, or answer it in the chat itself.
Yeah.
Because I think otherwise we cannot have any discussions on the smart controls, and this is something I don't want to miss. So I would hand over to Dirk and Vladimir to go ahead with this topic.
Thank you, Margot. My name is Dirk Becker, not Christian Streich, and I'm not leading Bayern Munich in the next season. I'm the area of product owner for UI5 smart controls and for the tables. And we're pretty happy that we can join this session today because we have some questions for you. And therefore our topic is less a presentation topic, but it's more a topic of interaction where we want to get some of your thoughts and of your interest points. The background is recently we received more and more requests to make some parts or the entire library of the smart controls open source. The SAP UI comp library, which comprises the smart controls, is so far only part of SAP UI5, and this has the reason that it was built internally and widely used for S/4HANA and was not intended to be used outside. And now we would like to get your ideas, which parts of our library is very important for you and how you want to use it. And therefore, I hand over to Vladimir, who will lead into the topic and who will prepare the discussion that we would love to have with you. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of to show maybe for the people who don't know which are the smart controls that we want to a bit to discuss today. And for this reason, I opened a demo app that we call it list report, standard list report that usually uses smart controls. And here basically we can see three parts. So the first one is here is the variant management. Then we have here the smart filter bar, and then the lower part is the smart table. So smart filter bar usually is bound to more or less the same data set that is table, and it's used for filtering data that is shown by the table, by the way. And what is smart about the smart filter bar? All these controls are using OData, and they depend on the OData data types and annotations. And to, how should I say, they control their more or less behavior and visuals. So you can, for instance, depending on the entity set that is bound to this filter bar and table, you see the corresponding fields. Of course, we can have custom columns and fields depending on the application use case. Then we have this functionality here, you know, that you can hide and show whatever fields you want, or to have them pre-filled for the smart filter bar. And similar type of settings that we call table personalization we have for the smart table, where you can choose which columns to be visible or not, also the other columns. Then you have also the if you want to have a sorting criteria by some column or grouping. And all of these settings somehow stored in these variants. So yeah, hopefully you have heard about them. So if you have different use cases throughout your working day, you can quickly switch between those, and you can see directly that, I mean, the fields are changed, some sorting criteria have changed here, and this is very convenient, right? So all of these are part of these smart controls, and they're really bound to our OData. And what I also want to show is a couple of other controls. So when we go here to the object page, we have the smart form usually goes together with the smart field. Smart field just an input that, again, depending on the data type and annotations can do different, you know, can render different controls, have different types of validation or no validation on the user input, and so on. And the last control that I just wanted to mention here is the value help dialog, which usually is used in conjunction with either with smart field or with smart filter bar. It's not kind of a standalone. You can use it as standalone, but the benefit is that it assists the user to choose the proper value, and it provides really, how should I say, powerful functionality for filtering and searching through a huge list of values. Usually it's recommended if you have more than 1,000 or 200, I think, I couldn't remember exactly the number. And exactly, if you don't use, for instance, OData, maybe you don't need, that is our questions that we go in our head. If you don't use OData, maybe you need just kind of the plain controls. If you use OData, then maybe we also provide open source this kind of smartness that we have that parses the OData protocol and the annotations. And by the way, I forgot one important thing, that's the smart chart. it has the same kind of personalization, like the table here. It's a bit more chart oriented, but it's the same setting type of panel. And all of this functionality, we have it in the comp library. And as Dirk mentioned, we have heard that maybe there is interest in open sourcing this. So far, we have not considered that. And we kind of started searching for feedback. So maybe, I don't know, we can open now for discussion.
So to comprise it, so the question for us is more or less really to figure out what makes sense for the outside world to share as an open source library. And I think we have seen, at least from the polls, what kind of features you are using and so on. But maybe, I don't know if someone wants to speak up in the chat or also by hand raising what they think. What are the use cases outside of the SAP ecosystems to use smart controls? Do you have an opinion on this? Does it make sense to use it outside there? Does it make sense to open source it? Does it make sense only to open source some parts of it or everything? So what is your opinion on that? Any opinion?
I do have one. I think this is helpful in the same way as other low-code tools and libraries help developers in other areas, and not just in SAP, right? And we do have companies and people using UI5 and web components, UI5 web components out of SAP. So building for partners, building for customers that don't have SAP, or startups building on top of something that is going to be deployed not just on SAP. And this kind of control, this would help a lot because it speeds up the development. And I think that's the difference between UI5 and other frameworks that we have in the market today. Is UI5 is not just the framework to build the application, it gives you a lot of things out of the box, and especially all the UI controls and UI elements that React and Vue, they don't have like an official set or collection of UI controls. And I think this would be very helpful for everybody that's building out of SAP, and we do have.
We were not sure because they're really, how should I say, strictly dependent on the OData V2 protocol and how much of OData is really used outside of SAP. So because it's, you know, it's Microsoft SAP thing mostly.
Yeah, I think the OData is a barrier, but we do have people using OData out of this context. We have a lot of OData happening in, especially when people are doing .NET development. So it's not as common for Node.js or for Java in general, because people would prefer some less verbose or something more modern or hyper than OData. But I think it still has a place.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mauricio. I think that was already quite helpful and insightful. Anyone else has an opinion on this? Or on specific
any preference towards any particular control that seems a bit more useful than the others?
Marian just writing, by far the smart table together with smart filter bar are the most used controls for me. Yeah, I think also the smart controls, what I heard, is also quite useful for creating like fast prototypes and so on, as it goes quite well. And then to showcase something. Any opinion on the value help? What I heard also, the value help is something that is used quite often also with freestyle. Do you have an opinion on that one? What is needed maybe there?
Value help as a standalone without OData. Yeah.
So Marcel is just writing, at least for our company, OData is the standard interface technology for applications running on SAP backends. So for us, it would be great if it would be open sourced for us. Most valuable, smart table, smart filter bar, variant management.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. If you have SAP backends, then OData is this is the way.
One question from me would also be more to the audience. Are you using OpenUI5 at all, or are you anyway using SAP UI5? So it doesn't make a difference whether it's open sourced or not. Or are there use cases, even when you are in general using SAP UI5, that you still want to have it open sourced, maybe to see the sources, to contribute, to use it in different environments or something like that? So that would be maybe interesting to know.
Any opinion on that?
Yeah, I can give you a comment based on my experience. So I worked for a startup, and that startup was building for SAP, but also building applications for non-SAP customers. And the vision was to have the same set of applications and the same UI, or exactly the same at the end, the same base code to deploy in multiple different customers, regardless their ERP. And the idea was just to wrap whatever was the API interface for that customer or that backend. Let's say if it was Oracle, Salesforce, whatever, would wrap on OData, and at the end we would consume OData, and the application would be UI5. So everything was built on OpenUI5. And for customers that are non-SAP, then we would have this issue with license if we were using something from smart controls, which are not available in the open source project, right? So for this was a real scenario, and this was a real problem that we have, that we would like to use just one code base, one application deployed for whatever backend system.
And they were also used or wanted to use smart control parts, or?
Exactly, and this was a challenge because at the time we couldn't, right? Because it was not part of the open source. So if the customer was an SAP customer, that would be all right. But if you were deploying the applications to non-SAP customers, that could be a problem in terms of licensing.
So it's a valid scenario to have OpenUI5 together with OData and not based on SAP UI5.
Good. Marian also mentioned it's for sure it's not only of the sake of open sourcing something, but he also mentioned that with open source it becomes more transparent for outside. So that's for sure also an argument for it. Okay, there we are over time right already. So I think maybe you can think about these questions and just write to us either on the OpenUI5 Slack channel, or I think most of our email addresses are also known to you. So just write to us what you think about it. If you have further feedback, discuss it with your colleagues and come back to us so we can really go further and decide what and how much of the smart controls we published with our OpenUI5 delivery. Saying that, thanks to all my panelists that you joined today. Thank you, Mauricio, for staying so long at nighttime only to join us. It was a great pleasure to meet you finally in person. Also, thank you, Dirk and Vladimir. Also, thank you, just thinking of open sourcing the smart controls. I think that's already a big step, and I'm really looking forward what will happen with that one. Next UI5ers Live will be in May, I think May 12th. So I hope all of you are back then. And with this, I say goodbye and have a good day and happy Easter.
Thank you, goodbye, happy Easter. Take care.
Happy
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.